In this video, I'm going to be building a point-to-site VPN configuration, which is a VPN connection between a laptop or any other mobile device that's supported to a Microsoft Azure virtual network using a VPN gateway. I've got a diagram to illustrate this. So we've got a laptop and we've got a mobile device here. They're connecting from home or anywhere else in the world over the internet, and they will connect to this Azure virtual network gateway. So they will build a VPN tunnel. And once they are connected to the Azure Virtual Network Gateway, they can access resources behind it. So I have an example. I've got a client 1 in my virtual network on IP address 10.1.1.7, and we will connect to this from a laptop. So from my client, my Windows 10 laptop here. And we've got a few connection profiles here, connection protocols, should I say. So we've got the OpenVPN protocol, which uses SSL TLS. It's an SSL TLS based VPN protocol. This is used by default and it's the best and mostly used option, as many firewalls allow SSL traffic on port 443. Or we can use the secure socket tunneling protocol, which is a TLS based protocol as well, only supported on Windows devices though. And if you have a Mac device, an Apple Mac device, the option is to use IKE version 2, that's Internet Key Exchange version 2, which is a widely known protocol because it's used in the IPsec framework. And then we've got authentication. We've got two methods of authentication, which is certificate-based authentication. So we can use a certificate that the VPN gateway trusts, or we can authenticate using an Azure Active Directory-based authentication account. So users can connect using their AD credentials. But for this, you need to do a few things, which is to configure an Azure AD tenant and enable Azure AD authentication on the gateway. But we will be doing the certificate-based authentication instead. Here are the configuration options. So the first one is to deploy a virtual network gateway, and we have lots of options in here, such as selecting the gateway SKU, depending on the number of connections you need and so on. We would then dedicate a subnet for the clients, known as the address pool, and this way we can route traffic between the clients and the virtual network. Next, we will create and install a root certificate for authentication purposes. This can be a root certificate from an enterprise certificate authority server, or it can be a self-signed certificate that we can create ourselves, and we will use this option. So we will create a self-signed certificate. Next, we will create and import the client certificates to the client devices. We won't be doing this step because I will be generating the client certificates from the client device itself. But if you are using a separate device, another device, you're generating the client certificate on another device, then you would of course need to generate it, export it and import it into the client device you're using to connect to the VPN. For step 5, we will download and install the VPN client configuration, which is a zip file. Step 6, connect via the VPN and verify its status. So we will connect to the VPN and make sure it's all up and running and working. And then for step 7, we will connect to a resource in the Azure cloud, which is this client 1 over here. To reach this IP address here, we might need to make some routing changes on my Windows 10 client device here, but we will have a look at that once we get to it. Enough of all the talking. Let's jump onto the Azure portal and let's configure it all now. I forgot to mention there are 3 things that I've already done, which you would need to do if you are starting from scratch. So I've already done them because I've already done a site-to-site VPN video, and as part of the site-to-site VPN creation, I have already configured my virtual network. So I've got a virtual network inside here called web server-vnet. And then within the virtual network, I've got a subnet. I think it's called web server-subnet. And then within the subnet, I have built this client 1 client on this IP address. So this is already configured, and you can see that on my site-to-site VPN video. I've also got one additional item already configured that I will be using for this video as well, and that also is in the site-to-site VPN video. And that is the creation of a gateway subnet I will show you on the portal itself. And this can be created before the VPN gateway itself, so before step 1. And I will show you how to create that. I will show you the one I have created. So let's jump onto the portal and let's start to configure these things. So before we start to configure the first step, which is the virtual network gateway, I will show you my pre-configured environment. So I've got a virtual network. You configure that from here. You can click on create, but I've already got one called web server-vnet. And if we have a look into it, I've already got a subnet. So I've got a CIDR space 10.1.0.0/20. And as part of this address space, I've got a subnet already configured. If we go into subnet, we can see my subnets here. So I've got my web server -subnet, and it's 10.110/27. That's about 30 IP addresses, 32 IP addresses. And Azure uses some of these for its system IP addresses, so it leaves you with a bit less. And then we've got our gateway subnet. This is what you would need to configure, but I've already got this created. And to create a gateway subnet, it's not the subnet icon here, but the one next to it, plus gateway subnet. It's grayed out for us because we've already got one created here. You can only create one per virtual network. Let's click on my gateway subnet to have a look at the settings in here. By the way, this name is not configurable. It's called Gateway Subnet, and I've got a 10.110/24 network, and as you can see, these have not been configured. And the Gateway Subnet contains the IP addresses that the virtual network gateway VMs and services use, so that's why it's needed, the Gateway Subnet. And some configurations may require much more IP addresses than others. So for example, if you're using ExpressRoute, which is not a VPN connection, it's a private connection over the ISP backbone, you will need a larger subnet. But for us, a /24 is more than adequate here. So let's click cancel, and that's how you would create it. And the name is not configurable. And going into subnets again, yeah, we've got this web server -subnet. This is the subnet we will be using. And if we click into it, we can see the settings for the subnet. We can see it's a 10.110/27. Let's click cancel here, and we can see connected devices to this web server -VNet. So we can see these network interface cards are connected to it, and I've got my client 1113 device network interface card connected on this IP address 10.117, and that network interface card, if we go to virtual machines over here, we can see the virtual machine here, client 1 here. So this is the client 1 virtual machine we will connect to using point-to-site IPsec VPN. And while we're in here, we can start it as well. You can see the private IP address on the right hand side here, and you can go to networking as well to see its network configuration. So you can see the network interface card here, client 1113. It gives you its IP addresses here as well. It's got a public IP address associated to it as well. I may have created, but we don't need that. I usually use a public IP address when I want to connect into the client from the outside world, when I don't have a bastion host set up. So this is the method I use, or you can use a VPN that we will be setting up shortly. So rather than connecting to it from its public IP address, we can use the private IP address through the VPN. And you can connect to the network interface card from here and have a look at its settings as well. Let's start to configure things. So the first thing we need to configure is the virtual network gateway. So if we go back to Microsoft Azure homepage, and to get to the network gateway, we can connect to it from here, virtual network gateways, or we can type it in from here. But if you don't have it there, you can access it through this menu bar here. So we can go to all services from here, and then networking over here, and the bottom left hand side here we've got virtual network gateway. So let's click on it, and then let's create a virtual network gateway. We can leave my subscription as it is. I've only got one, so that's absolutely fine. But if you've got a few, you just need to select the subscription you need. And then we need to put it into a resource group. But for this, the VNet needs to be populated first before it will automatically populate the resource group based on the VNet. So let's choose our VPN VNet. So the VPN VNet is, or should I just call it virtual network? So the virtual network is down here. And if we drop this down, right, it's not here because we need to specify the region. So it needs to be in the same region as where the virtual network is created. So our virtual network was created in the UK West or South, one of those. So let's go to UK. Let's go with UK West. And it's still not there, so it must be UK South. And there it is. Web server -VNet. So once I select this, we can see our resource group has been populated now. Web server -resource group derived from virtual networks resource group. Let's give it a name. Point to site _ VNet _ gateway GW. Region is UK South. For gateway type, we have VPN selected, which is the right one, but we can also see we can use ExpressRoute from here as well. Then for VPN type, we'll be using route-based VPN, and you would use route-based VPN for most VPN types, such as point-to-site VPN connection, like this one. or for other use cases as well, such as if you had multiple site-to-site VPN connections, so not just a single site-to-site VPN connection, or for inter-virtual network traffic between VNets. Or another example is if you needed to use IKE version 2, for example. IKE version 2 is newer than IKE version 1, so there's a few enhancements with it, and there's a few other situations where you would use route-based VPN as well. For SKU, we would select a gateway SKU, and depending on which one we choose will determine the number of client connections we have and the throughput and other things as well. I'll use the top one, which is called basic here. The basic VPN should not be used for any production scenarios, so if we click the I, there is more information here which gives you more information on the different VPN gateway SKUs, and you can click on learn more from here as well. For generation, there is two options. One is generation 1 and the other one would be generation 2, but we've clicked on the basic SKU, so there is no generation 2 here. So here we can use Gen 1 or Gen 2. Sometimes this cannot be changed depending on the SKU you choose. The new generation of VPN gateways provide much better tunnel performance, up to 1 gigabits of throughput per second, and if you're using multiple tunnels, an aggregate of 1.25 gigabits per second. You can also enable the active-active VPN gateway option as well, which provides even higher throughput with multiple flows to the VPN gateway. But anyway, let's click on generation 1 from here. And we've got our virtual network specified already, which has automatically specified the subnet as well, gateway subnet 10.1.1.10/24 over here, and it tells us here only virtual networks in the currently selected subscription and region are listed. Let's scroll this to the bottom from the right hand side to see the other options. For public IP address here, we can create a new one or use an existing one. We will create a new one. Let's give it a public IP address name. Let's call it point_VPN_gateway_IP. Then we've got the public IP address SKU and the assignment. Both of these cannot be changed, as you can see here. So let's move on. And then we've got enable active-active mode. And this is where you can choose active-active if you want some load balancing and failover. Basically, both gateways are actively handling IPsec VPN tunnels. If we hover over the I, we can see we need a certain gateway SKU for this to work. And if we enable this, we can see we would need a second public IP address, I guess, for the other VPN gateway. But let's leave this as disabled. And we don't want to use BGP, but if we wanted to use BGP, we can enable it as well from here. So we can click on enable, and for this we have the option of configuring a BGP autonomous system number in here. If we are wanting to do any BGP peering with our ISP, and let's scroll down to the bottom a bit more, and it shows the custom Azure APIPA BGP IP address. So this is the option of providing a BGP automatic IP address, which is an IP address starting with the 169 address. We can see that from the I icon to read more information about that. But let's click on disabled here and let's review and create the virtual network gateway. The validation has passed and we can see all the settings here. We can hover over the different items so we can check the settings again, review and create. But as this takes 30 to 40 minutes, I will pause the video and I will start it as soon as it's being created. So let's click on create here. The deployment has been completed and we can see it from here, as well as have a look at the deployment details. And let's go to the resource. Now we're in the P2S VNet gateway resource, so from here we can configure, monitor and troubleshoot the gateway. But the option we want is within settings here, and it's called point to site configuration. And this is where we are configuring step number 2, which is to create the address pool. So let's click on configure now and let's give it an address pool. So I'll go with 192.168.1.0/24 and click save. Next, we need to configure the certificates, and the certificates are used to authenticate the VPN clients. To configure the certificate requirements for authentication, we need to either use an Enterprise Certificate Authority server. If you're using an Enterprise CA server, you can use your existing certificate chain. You just need to acquire the .cer file for the root certificate that you want to use. Or the way we will be doing it is we will be creating a self-signed root certificate and upload the public key to the VPN gateway device, so then it becomes a trusted root certificate and can be used for authentication. And we will generate the client certificate from the root certificate, which is installed on the client device that needs to connect to the virtual network. We need to create the certificate using Azure PowerShell, and we are going to be doing this from a computer running Windows 10, but you can also do it from a Windows Server 2016. We'll use Windows PowerShell console with elevated privileges. And if you want the full end-to-end instructions on how to do this, I took the information from this web page here. And you would find the scripts in here that you would need, or a link to the scripts. Let me show you the scripts. And the direct link to the scripts is this web page here. I think there's a link to it from here. So this web page here shows us the actual scripts, and I didn't change a thing, so you can just copy and paste these exact scripts. So I will show you my scripts. I've already taken them from here. It also shows you exactly what you need to do to generate these certificates as well. The top one here is my root certificate script. It creates a self-signed root certificate named PS2 root certificate. We can see here CN equals PS2 root certificate, and we can see the hashing algorithm here using SHA-256 and a key length of 2048. And then this is the client certificate here, and the client certificate that you generate is automatically installed in certificates, current user personal certificates on the computer you do it on. And I will be doing it on my client itself that I will be creating a VPN connection on. Let's open up PowerShell and we will generate the certificates. And you would right click on Windows PowerShell and run it as administrator with elevated privileges. So I've got my Windows PowerShell open here, and I've got my scripts over here. Let's copy the root certificate. Right click, copy, and do a right click, edit, paste, enter. And that's done. We will do the same for client certificate here. Copy it all, copy, and do an edit paste on the Windows PowerShell and hit enter again. And that's done. It was easy as that. And just to say again, these certificates were not changed. They were directly copied from the website, and we just pasted them in. I didn't need to do anything with them. Next, I'll open up the Microsoft Management Console and export the certificate. We don't need to export the client certificate, it's already on here. We just need to export the root certificate and import it into the Azure portal. Here's my MMC, file, add remove snapping, and add the certificates and click OK. We need the my user account and then personal certificates, and in here we will see the root CA and the child CA as well over here. Now we need to export the root certificate and add it to the VPN gateway so it has the public key of the certificate, and we can do this by right clicking the certificate and going to all tasks and export. Let's click next, and we do not want to export the private key, so let's click next again, and we want the second option, base64 encoded x.509.cer, and let's click next again. Let's give it a file name of VPN root cert, and I will save it somewhere so I can access it. Give it file name VPN root cert and click save. Now click on next here and we can click on finish, and it says the export was successful. Click OK. And now if I go to my other screen and have a look on the certificate folder, my certificate should be in there. I'm going to right click and open the certificate with Notepad and drag it into the screen so we can see it, and then all I need to do is copy the certificate details excluding the beginning certificate and the end certificate and copy it, and then we need to go back to the portal here and click on point site configuration. Let's refresh it. Let's go to leave page and then go back onto it. Let's give it a name, P2S root cert, and then let's paste everything in here that we copied and click save. This takes a couple of minutes. And once deployment has been successful, we should be able to download the VPN client here. So this should become accessible to us. We may need to refresh this page again in a few minutes. If I click away from it, let's click on connections and go back into point site configuration. And we can see that the download VPN client is available for us. So let's click it and let's... Right, I can see it's still saving the virtual network gateway. So we cannot download it just yet. This needs to fully complete and then we should be able to download it. Right, it's saved. So the saved virtual network gateway message has popped up. So let's click it again and let's see if we can download it now. I think I need to click save again. Oh no, okay. So it's got it. We can download it now. And here it is in zip format. So we can save this file. Let's click on OK. And I'll access the downloaded zip folder and I will drag it into this screen so we can see it. And here it is. And it gives us 3 different installers. And the one we want for this client is the middle one, Windows AMD 64 for my Windows 10 64-bit version client. Let's go into this folder and let's double click this executable file and click on run here. We get this notification about running an unrecognized app. We can just click on more info over here and click on run anyway. And the installation has carried on my other screen. So let me just drag that back in here. So web server-vnet, it's picked up my web server-vnet. Do you wish to install a VPN client for web server-vnet? Yes. And that's it, that's done. So if I go to my settings and have a look at the network and internet here, and then click on VPN from here, and we can see the web server-vnet profile here. Let's click it. And we can see advanced options in here as well. Let's have a look into advanced options. We can see connection properties and we can edit these. And in here we can see the different ways we can connect. We can give it a 7MO address. VPN type is automatic, but we can see the other options in here as well. iKey version 2 at the bottom here. And the type of sign-in, username and password, smart card, one-time password, one-off password certificate. We don't need to do anything here. It will automatically pick all this up. So username optional, password optional, and you can remember my sign-in info. Let's click cancel here. Let's go back and let's click on connect here. And again on my other screen I've got a dialog box saying do you want to connect. Click connect to begin connecting. To work offline, click cancel. So let's click connect. Connection manager needs elevated privileges. That's fine. Let's click continue. And that's it, it's done. It's connected. So we can see connected here. So we're connected to the web server-vnet. Now we can try and connect to my client 1 machine, which is on the 10.1.1.7 using RDP. So let me get RDP up and running. And if we click 10.1.1.7 from here, click enter. And it's asking me for my password, so I will just get my password and paste that in. And let's paste the password in and click on OK. Click yes here. And there we go. On the other screen it's giving me access to my client. Now off the video previously I've set all this up to test it, and I needed to put a route in my Windows 10 client to point anything going to 10.1.1.7 to the VPN tunnel. Otherwise it would not work. So I had to do that. I didn't have to do it this time. I thought I deleted it, but maybe it's still in there. So we will have a look at that as well. So if you needed to add a route, if I go to my settings again and we have our web server-vnet here, if we click on the advanced options, sorry, not here. Let's have a look at my networking connection, which is on the right here. Let's change adapter options, and then it's this one here, web server-vnet. Let's double click it. We can see again it's on my other screen. Let's drag that in and we can see the details here. So we can see the IP address is 192.168.1.2. So we need a static route pointed to that IP address for anything going to my 10.1.1.0/27 network, so it can reach my client 1 service. So if I'm accessing my client 1, which is on the 10.1.1.7, it will go via the VPN tunnel, which is this IP address here. And the way we do this is we open up a command prompt and we can have a look at the routes by doing a route print, and we can see that over here. I'm pretty sure I did not add this. This is automatic, so it usually does this automatically for you because I added it as a 10.110/27 previously, and I removed it as well. So this looks like it's added the whole web server-vnet CIDR address space as a route, which makes sense. So I'm not sure why it never worked for me previously off the recording, but it's working absolutely perfectly fine now, so that's all that matters. But if you wanted to add a route, you would use these commands here. Route add 10.1.1 should have a 1 dot here. Route add 10.1.1.0 mask, and then the mask, it should be a /27, and then the next hop, and then you can do a route print to check and verify your route is in the Windows 10 routing table. Finally, if we go back to our VPN, which is this one here, we can see it's connected, and we can see our client is connected over here, 10.1.1.7, so we're connected to it. If I disconnect it from here, it should throw me off the client. So let's disconnect and let's have a look at the client, and we can see it's disconnected. And this is just to prove that this VPN was giving us access to this client within the Microsoft Azure virtual network.